Welcome to Cocoa Tales Reddit, where we pour a cup of tea and spill the real stories of our lives. You know, the ones that are whispered between best friends, the kind of secrets that feel heavy in your chest until you finally let them out. It's in these moments, in sharing our vulnerabilities, that we find connection and realize we're not so alone in our struggles. So, get comfortable, maybe light a candle, and let's talk about those times when a single sentence can change the entire direction of your life. Tonight's story is about that exact moment. A moment where love, trust, and the future all hang in the balance, waiting for a choice. It's about discovering that the person you're building a life with might be building a completely different one without you even knowing. My whole world tilted on a Tuesday night while I was doing something incredibly mundane. Reviewing wedding vendor contracts. My fiancée, Vanessa, and I had been together for 5 years, engaged for one, and our wedding was just 3 months away. We were in the home stretch, or so I thought. We kept our finances separate, but managed all the wedding costs through a shared spreadsheet, a system I thought was transparent and worked for us. As an accountant, spreadsheets are my comfort zone. They represent order, clarity, and truth. That night, the truth they revealed was terrifying. There was a charge that immediately jumped out at me. $1,500 for venue decorations. I remembered our conversation vividly. We had agreed on the standard $500 package to save money. "Hey, babe," I called out to her in the living room. "What's this decoration charge for?" "Oh, I upgraded us," she said, her tone casual, her eyes still glued to the glow of her phone screen. The indifference in her voice was like a small paper cut. "The basic package looked cheap," she added. I walked into the living room, trying to keep my own voice level. "Vanessa, that's $700 over our budget. We talked about this." She just shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture that felt disproportionately hurtful. "It's our wedding, Derek. Don't be stingy." Stingy. The word hung in the air, making me feel small and difficult for simply trying to stick to the plan we had both made. A plan to save for a down payment on a house right after the wedding. That's when I noticed her nails. They were a full set, with an intricate new design. "Did you get your nails done again? You just went last week." "So?" she replied, finally looking up at me with a flicker of annoyance. So, that was another $80 we hadn't budgeted for. It felt petty to even bring it up, but it wasn't about the $80. It was about the pattern. "And your bachelorette party?" I pressed on. "I thought it was supposed to be low-key. Your sister mentioned something about a weekend trip now." Her annoyance blossomed into full-blown irritation. "God, why are you being such an accountant about everything?" The irony was painful. "Because I literally am an accountant," I said, my voice tight. "And because we agreed on a plan." Her response was a verbal shrug that dismissed 5 years of partnership. "Plans change. My friends want to do something nice for me." A strange feeling, a mix of suspicion and dread, crept over me. I pulled up her Instagram on my phone. Her story from earlier that day showed a picture of her with shopping bags from a high-end department store. "Vanessa, how much did you spend today?" Her defensiveness flared. "Why are you stalking my Instagram?" "It's not stalking when you post it for the world to see," I said, trying to stay calm. "How much?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Like $400. I needed outfits for the honeymoon." The excuse was so flimsy it was almost insulting. "We haven't even booked a honeymoon yet, Vanessa." That's when she stood up, placing her hands on her hips in a gesture of pure defiance. The air crackled. Her voice was cold and hard as she delivered the line that would detonate our entire life together. "You know what? You either accept me as I am or you don't. I'm not changing who I am for you." Silence. 5 years of memories, laughter, and future dreams seemed to evaporate in that single, selfish statement. Her stance wasn't about her personality. It was a defense of her right to lie, to spend recklessly, and to dismiss our shared goals without a second thought. And she was giving me an ultimatum on it. A strange calm washed over me. The anger and hurt solidified into a quiet, heavy certainty. Option 2, I said, my voice barely a whisper. What? She asked, confused. I didn't repeat myself. I walked past her into our bedroom, opened the small safe in the closet, and took out the ring box. She had taken the ring off for her nail appointment, and, in what was becoming a common habit, hadn't bothered to put it back on. Her voice changed when she saw the box in my hand. The defiance was gone, replaced by a tremor of worry. "What are you doing?" "You said accept you or don't," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I choose don't." I slipped the box into my pocket. Her face went pale, the color draining away as the reality of my words set in. "Derek, I didn't mean, you're not serious," she stammered. "You're ending our engagement over a few purchases." "No," I said, my voice firm now. "I'm ending it over the lies. The venue upgrade you hid from me, the secret shopping sprees, the bachelorette party that mysteriously tripled in cost, the complete and utter dismissal of every financial agreement we've ever made." Suddenly, she was scrambling, backtracking frantically. "What I really meant was that we should compromise. I didn't mean you had to accept everything." For the next hour, she tried to explain, but her story shifted every few minutes. First, she meant I should accept her personality, not her actions. Then, she meant I should accept her need for nice things. Then, it was about me being too controlling with money, or that relationships require flexibility. Each explanation was a desperate, tangled mess that only made the original lie worse. The strong, defiant woman from moments before was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. "Derek, please," she begged. "The wedding is in 3 months. Everything's booked. What will people think?" And there it was. Her biggest concern wasn't losing me. It was the public shame. I packed a bag while she followed me. A whirlwind of apologies, accusations, and bargaining. It was my fault for overreacting. She was sorry and would do better. I was being emotionally abusive. She couldn't live without me. As I walked to the door, she played her last card. "Fine, leave," she yelled. "But you're still paying for half the wedding. All those deposits are non-refundable." I turned around one last time. "Actually," I said, feeling a cold sense of satisfaction, "I put all the deposits on my credit card because you were too busy to handle it. The contracts are in my name. I'll be canceling everything tomorrow." The look of pure shock on her face was the last thing I saw before I closed the door on our 5 years together, her screams about lawsuits echoing behind me. The 2-carat ring in my pocket, once a symbol of our future, now felt like an $8,000 lesson on paying attention to red flags. She had given me an ultimatum, and I had simply taken her at her word. She told me to accept her or don't, and I didn't. That first night at my brother Alex's place was a blur. He didn't ask a single question when I showed up, just handed me a beer and pointed me toward the guest room. The silence was a relief after the screaming. I spent hours just sitting there, turning the heavy ring box over and over in my hands, feeling the weight of the $8,000 lesson inside. A part of me, a naive, hopeful part, genuinely thought that after a few days of cooling off, Vanessa and I could have a mature, adult conversation. I imagined us sitting down, calmly figuring out how to split the losses on the wedding deposits, and go our separate ways with some dignity. I could not have been more wrong. Vanessa didn't cool off. She went full nuclear on day one. I took a personal day from work the next morning, my mind set on damage control. It was time to dismantle the future we were supposed to build. I started with the big one, the venue. Then I moved down the list. The caterer, the photographer, the DJ. With each call, I repeated the same grim, clipped phrase, "The wedding is off." Most of the vendors were surprisingly understanding, offering condolences as if there had been a death in the family, which, in a way, there had been. I was able to recover about 70% of the money I had put down, a small silver lining in a very dark cloud. The photographer, a guy named Mike, was the real MVP of the whole ordeal. When I explained the situation, he didn't even hesitate. "Dude," he said, his voice full of sympathy. "I shot a wedding last year where the bride was texting another guy. During the reception, 'Get out now. You're doing the right thing.' He refunded me for everything except his initial booking fee, and his words were more validating than he could ever know. I had made it about halfway through my cancellation checklist when my phone started vibrating nonstop. By noon, Vanessa had figured out what I was doing. It wasn't a mystery how. The venue had called her to confirm the cancellation since she was listed as the bride, and she completely lost it. The numbers were staggering. 47 missed calls and 112 text messages in the span of a few hours. The texts were a masterclass in emotional whiplash, cycling through every tactic imaginable. It started with commands. "Stop canceling everything. You're ruining my life." Then came the guilt trips, designed to hit me where it hurt. My mom already bought her dress, as if a dress was more important than a lifetime of lies. When guilt didn't work, she escalated to accusations. "This is financial abuse," one text screamed in all caps. The audacity of it was breathtaking. She, who had lied about thousands of dollars, was accusing me of financial abuse for canceling contracts I had paid for myself. It was like a thief accusing you of robbery for taking your own wallet back. Then came the big guns, the legal threats. "I'll sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress." That one actually made me laugh out loud. The image of her trying to explain to a judge that her emotional distress was caused by me refusing to pay for a wedding after she gave me an ultimatum to accept her lies. It was absurd. Sue me for canceling my own contracts? Good luck with that. I sat there on my brother's couch, scrolling through the wall of messages, and a profound sadness washed over me. This wasn't the woman I had asked to marry me. The charming, funny, and ambitious person I fell in love with was gone, replaced by this frantic, entitled stranger who was willing to say or do anything to get her way. The breakup was no longer just about money or even the lies. It was about the terrifying realization that I had spent 5 years of my life with someone I didn't truly know at all. And as the angry, threatening texts continued to pour in, I knew this was just the beginning. The fallout was going to be far messier than I ever could have imagined. I wish I could say the barrage of texts was the worst of it, but that was just her opening salvo. The next day, the battlefront expanded from my phone screen to my actual life. Her mother, Deb, showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of a meeting when my desk phone rang. It was the receptionist, her voice hushed and panicked. "Derek, there's a woman here named Deb. She says she's your fiancée's mother. She's very insistent on speaking with you." My blood ran cold. I told the receptionist I wasn't available, hoping she would just leave. Instead, Deb started yelling right there in the lobby of my accounting firm. She shouted about how I was probably cheating on her daughter, that I was looking for any excuse to abandon poor, innocent Vanessa. It was a spectacle. Thankfully, my boss, Stephen, happened to be walking through the lobby. He's a no-nonsense guy, and he immediately stepped in, telling Deb that she needed to leave the premises or he would call the police. Deb left, but not before delivering a parting shot to everyone within earshot, declaring that I was a pathetic excuse for a man who couldn't handle a strong woman. A strong woman, apparently, was one who lied about money and expected you to just accept it. Security had to escort her out. The humiliation was immense. With her mother's direct assault having failed, Vanessa switched tactics. On day 3, she took her case to the court of public opinion. Oh boy, did she post. It was a multi-platform smear campaign on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. In her version of events, she painted herself as the victim and me as the villain. I was financially controlling. I had abandoned her 3 months before our wedding simply because she bought a few nice things. She also made a very interesting claim that I was keeping the engagement ring, which she insisted legally belonged to her. I almost had to admire the confidence. Legally, she was completely wrong. An engagement ring is considered a conditional gift in our state. The condition is that a marriage actually takes place. No marriage, no ring. It's the kind of thing you look up when you're an accountant about to make a major purchase. Her friends, of course, piled on immediately, flooding her comments with their support. I was a textbook case of toxic masculinity. I was committing financial abuse. My favorite was the armchair psychoanalysis about my small dick energy. It was all very classy. According to them, Vanessa had dodged a massive bullet by getting away from a monster like me. For a day or so, it felt like her strategy was working. She was controlling the narrative. But then, something interesting happened. An email popped into my inbox from a name I hadn't seen in a while. Shannon, an old coworker of mine who, as it turned out, followed Vanessa on Instagram. The email was short. "Hey, Derek. Saw the drama online. This felt relevant." Attached were screenshots, dozens of them. They were all from Vanessa's Finsta or close friends story over the past 6 months. There were designer hauls from boutiques I'd never heard of. There were pictures of lavish dinners with her friends at restaurants where the appetizers cost more than our weekly grocery budget. There were receipts from spa days and weekend getaways. All of this was posted during the exact same period she had been telling me, with a serious look on her face, that she was being frugal and sacrificing so we could save for the wedding and our future house. The sheer scale of the deception was sickening. She hadn't just fudged the numbers on a venue decoration. She had been living a completely separate financial life, funded by lies. Her attempt to ruin my reputation had backfired spectacularly. She had created a digital paper trail of her own deceit, and now, thanks to Shannon, I had all the receipts. The screenshots from Shannon were a bombshell, but the shrapnel just kept flying. The very next day, day 4 of this nightmare week, Vanessa decided her victim narrative needed a new plot twist. She posted a new photo on her main Instagram feed. It was a picture of her at some trendy wine bar, sitting intimately close to some guy I didn't recognize. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive hypocrisy. Sometimes the universe removes people to make room for better things. Excited for new beginnings. The universe. She was crediting the universe for a situation she created with her own lies and ultimatums. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Craig. "Bro, isn't that the guy from her gym?" My heart sank. It was Brendan, her personal trainer. The one she'd been seeing twice a week for her wedding body prep. The one she swore was totally professional when I asked why she needed expensive, individual sessions instead of the group classes we could actually afford. It all clicked into place. The lies weren't just about money. They were about everything. She wasn't just moving on. She was revealing a life that had clearly been running parallel to ours for who knows how long. The next day, I had to go back to the apartment. There were still things I needed, things that mattered to me. My gaming console, some clothes, and my grandfather's irreplaceable record collection. Since my name was still on the lease, I had every right to be there. I braced myself for a confrontation, but I never could have prepared for what I found. I opened the door to my own apartment, and there he was. Brendan, lounging on my couch, eating my food, and watching my Netflix. The sheer audacity of it left me speechless for a second. "Oh," I said, unable to hide my shock. "This is happening fast." Vanessa jumped up, her face a mask of fury. "Derek, you can't just show up here," she spat, as if I were the intruder. "I could have you arrested for entering my own apartment." Her threat was so ridiculous, it was almost funny. Brendan, to his credit, stood up, trying to look intimidating. The guy was built, I'll give him that. "Hey man," he said. "No need for drama." "No drama," I agreed, keeping my voice steady. "Just getting my stuff." I walked past them and started gathering my things. But as I was heading for the door with the last box, I couldn't resist. I turned to Brendan. "Just for your information," I said. "She spent $400 on clothes last week while crying to me about wedding expenses. Might want to keep your credit cards locked up." Vanessa shrieked, "Get out! This is harassment!" as I closed the door behind me. The drama, however, was far from over. The following day, I received a formal-looking letter. It was from a lawyer. Not a good lawyer, mind you. The letterhead looked like it came from the kind of attorney who advertises on bus benches. The letter contained a list of demands. 1. The engagement ring had to be returned to Vanessa. 2. I needed to provide compensation for her wedding-related emotional distress. 3. I had to pay for half of all the non-refundable deposits I had already canceled. And the grand finale, 4. I was expected to pay for 3 months of her rent while she transitions. My response was simple. I hired my own lawyer, a real one, with an office that wasn't on wheels. Her reply to their demands was a thing of beauty, a swift and brutal shutdown of every point. The ring stays with the purchaser per state law. There are no grounds for emotional distress. The deposits were paid solely by her client, me, and the lease termination would proceed according to its standard terms. The battle lines were officially drawn. She had her new man and a bus bench lawyer. I had the truth and a professional. The fight was about to get ugly. My lawyer handled the legal threats, but a few days later, a call came from a number I didn't expect. Vanessa's dad, Robert. In the 5 years I'd known her family, Robert had always been the reasonable one, a calm and steady presence, in contrast to his wife's more dramatic personality. "Derek, can we talk, man to man?" he asked, his voice weary. He started by talking about the 5 years we'd spent together, about throwing it all away so close to the wedding. It was the speech I had been expecting. I decided to cut through the narrative Vanessa had clearly spun for him. "Robert, did she tell you why we split?" I asked gently. "Something about a fight over money?" he said, and the vagueness of his answer told me everything I needed to know. "So," I told him. I laid out the entire story, starting with the spreadsheet and ending with her ultimatum. I explained the secret spending, the constant lies about our budget, and the complete dismissal of our future plans. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy and spoke volumes. Finally, he spoke. That doesn't sound like the full story she told us." He then brought up the ring, saying Vanessa told them I was keeping it from her illegally. I calmly explained that the law was on my side, but I also added a moral justification. "Legally, it's mine," I said. "Morally, too, considering she's already moved her personal trainer into our apartment." The silence returned, followed by a sharp, confused question. Her what? It seemed Vanessa had conveniently forgotten to include Brendan in the victim narrative she sold to her own father. The rest of the call was brief. Robert sounded stunned, and he ended the conversation by saying he needed to reassess some things. For the first time, I felt like someone in her family was seeing the truth. Meanwhile, a new front in this war had opened up. The apartment. Our lease was up in 2 months, and since we were both on it, we had joint liability. I had already given our landlord, Gary, notice that I wouldn't be renewing. Vanessa, however, had other plans. First, she tried to get the landlord to remove my name from the lease and add Brendan's. That plan failed when she learned my signature was required, which I obviously refused to give. Her next move was to claim I had legally abandoned the apartment, hoping the landlord would give her sole rights to renew. Gary, the landlord, called me to check. "Derek, she's saying you moved out and left her with all the bills," he said. "Gary," I replied, "I have text messages where she told me to leave. Also, has she mentioned her new boyfriend who is living there now?" The unauthorized occupant was a clear lease violation, and Gary scheduled a routine inspection. The inspection was damning. Brendan had clearly moved in, with clothes and toiletries everywhere. They had also repainted a wall without permission, and there was a new, unauthorized pet, Brendan's dog. Vanessa was issued a formal warning. Fix the violations or face eviction proceedings. With Brendan and his dog forced to officially move out, her plan started to crumble. Desperate, she applied to renew the lease on her own. Gary ran her credit and income verification, and the numbers didn't lie. Her part-time social media consulting job brought in maybe $2,000 a month, but the rent was $1,800. She didn't meet the landlord's requirement that a tenant's income be 3 times the rent. She needed a cosigner. And that's when my phone lit up with a text from her. The audacity was almost impressive. "Derek," she wrote, "I know things ended badly, but we both love this apartment. Can you please co-sign the renewal? I'll pay everything. Just need your signature." My response was a single word: no. Her reply came instantly: "You're really going to make me homeless out of spite." She still couldn't see it. I wasn't making her do anything. This was the life she had chosen, one lie at a time. And now she was running out of people to bail her out. Having been shot down by me, Vanessa turned to her only remaining option: Brendan. She tried to get Mr. Muscles to co-sign the lease with her. This was the moment where her new, upgraded life was supposed to solidify. Instead, it imploded. The landlord ran Brendan's credit, and the result was a disaster. His score was a dismal 520. It turned out he had a history of unpaid debts and even a recent car repossession. He was just as financially irresponsible as she was. When Vanessa found out, she did what she does best. She lost it on social media. She posted a long, bitter story ranting about men who pretend to have their lives together. The post was deleted within hours, but not before plenty of people, presumably including Brendan or his friends, saw it. The next day, Brendan packed his bags while she was at work, left, and blocked her on everything. Just like that, her new man was gone. With nowhere else to turn, Vanessa went crawling back to her parents. But her father, Robert, hadn't been idle since our phone call. He had been doing some digging. He discovered that Vanessa had been lying to them about wedding expenses to get more money. Worse, he found out she had secretly taken out a credit card in her mom's name for emergencies and completely maxed it out. The money they had given her specifically for a wedding dress had been spent on designer clothes and handbags. So when she tearfully asked them to co-sign her lease, they said no, but they did more than that. They gave her an ultimatum of their own. She was to move back into her childhood bedroom to get her life together under their supervision. I went back to the apartment 2 days before the lease officially ended to pick up my last few things. The scene was grimly satisfying. Vanessa was sitting on the floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes, crying into her phone. "No, I can't afford first and last month plus a deposit," she sobbed to whoever was on the other end. "I don't have that kind of money." She saw me and hung up, her face streaked with tears and fury. "Happy now?" she sneered. "I have to move back in with my parents at 29 because of you." "Because of me?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "Or because you burned through every single safety net you had with lies and overspending?" "I had everything planned," she cried. "The wedding, the apartment, my life. You ruined it all." She still couldn't grasp the reality of the situation. It was never about the shopping, it was about the profound disrespect. She tried one last time, one final, desperate manipulation. "If you ever loved me, you'd help me," she whispered, looking up at me with pleading eyes. "Just co-sign for a small studio. I promise I'll pay you back." "The answer is no, Vanessa," I said, turning to leave. "Good luck." As I was walking out the door, her mom, Deb, was walking in. This was the same woman who had stormed into my office and called me pathetic. She looked exhausted, aged by her daughter's chaos. She stopped in front of me and looked me in the eye. "Derek," she said quietly, her voice heavy with regret, "I owe you an apology. We didn't know the extent of things." She told me about the credit card Vanessa had taken out in her name, an $8,000 limit, maxed out. And then, in a quiet voice, she added, "I'm filing fraud charges if she doesn't pay it back." That was it. The ultimate validation. Even the mother who had fiercely defended her was now done with her crap. Vanessa hadn't just lost a fiancé, she had burned every bridge she had ever stood on. It's been a few months since the lease ended, and the dust has finally settled. The quiet in my life is something I'm still getting used to. I found a nice one-bedroom apartment downtown, closer to my office, and somehow $400 cheaper than the place Vanessa and I shared. I sold the ring, and while I took a loss, the $6,000 I got was more than just money. It was freedom. It was the deposit on this new life. My bank account is actually growing now, a steady upward climb instead of the mysterious drain I'd gotten used to. It's amazing what happens when you're not subsidizing someone else's secret lifestyle. As for Vanessa, she's living back home with her parents, working a retail job because her social media consulting business apparently wasn't enough to pay the bills. Her Instagram is a bizarre collection of inspirational quotes about rising from the ashes and starting new chapters. Brendan, according to friends from the gym, is telling everyone she was crazy and that he dodged a bullet. He's already dating another one of his clients. The thing that still gets me, the thing I think about in the quiet moments, is that she had everything. A man who loved her and was willing to marry her, despite the red flags. An apartment she couldn't afford on her own. Parents who were ready to help with her dream wedding. And she set it all on fire because she couldn't stop lying about money. Last week, she texted me from a friend's phone. "I know you hate me, but I'm desperate. Can I borrow $1,000? I'll pay you back, please." I didn't respond. I just screenshotted it and sent it to my brother with the caption, "Remember when she said, 'Accept me as I am or don't.'" I'm grateful, strangely enough. Grateful she gave me that ultimatum. Grateful she showed me exactly who she was before we signed a marriage license. Grateful I had the strength to choose don't. And that's what I want to leave with all of you tonight. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? At what point does being supportive cross the line into enabling bad behavior? I thought I was being patient, that I was giving her space to grow. Was I just blind to the truth? And what about financial infidelity? We talk so much about other kinds of cheating, but isn't this a betrayal of the deepest trust, too? To build a future with someone on a foundation of lies about something so fundamental, could you forgive it? Her own mother was considering filing fraud charges over that maxed-out credit card. Should she? Where does family loyalty end and accountability begin? It's all so messy and complicated. Was Vanessa's ultimatum a desperate power play that just backfired spectacularly? Or was it a cry for help from someone in over her head? I guess I'll never really know. In the end, she didn't just want me to accept her shopping habits. She wanted me to accept her lies. And that's a price that's just too high to pay for love. If this story made you feel understood, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Cocoa Table Reddit. Every follow and comment gives me the motivation to keep sharing these real, emotional stories with you. And if you have a story of your own, feel free to share it in the comments. I'm always here to listen.